Okay, in thinking about the Doriani assignment, we need to be looking at this page here. These are the questions and also the rubric. There are two categories on the rubric: grammar, syntax, readability, these things, and responses to questions. So we'll navigate back to the assignment. So we need to have the book in addition to these instructions because the book is more explicit, has fuller instructions. So not just this, but they need to be looking at the book as well. So for example, look, chapter 5, page 75, question 2. They don't know what the question is. They have to look in the book to see the question. So we need to go off the book's instructions. It's more full. With that said, there are 6 parts to this first question, 3 parts to the second question, 4 parts to the chapter 11 question, and 1 part to the chapter 12 question. That's a total of 14 responses they should have to Genesis 22. So the first question asks them to trace, let's see, I'm starting on page 70, setting the stage, the characters, the conflict, the crisis and climax, the resolution, and the following action. That's 6 parts. Application, they're supposed to give an application, present some problems that people may have to that application, and then they're supposed to respond to those problems. So that's 3 parts. Chapter 11 question has 4 parts. They're supposed to do topic, theme, proposition, redemptive theme. Chapter 12, the redemptive thrust, 1 part. Now there is overlap between redemptive theme and redemptive thrust. In fact, I think it's a redundant question. With that said, they need to answer both. They don't have the liberty just to not answer chapter 12. With that said, if their answers are the same, that's okay. Doriani discusses a fallen condition focus and a redemptive, I think it's an RCF focus as well. So, in a perfect RHF focus, a redemptive historical focus on page 174. I guess ideally one would be in fallen condition focus and the other would be an HF focus, but if they're the same, that's okay. So 14 parts to this question. Here, this question in chapter 7 asks them to list problems and to solve some. That's 2 parts. This one asks them to develop themes. That means they must include more than 2. If they only include 2, that's okay. It's only 2 parts. If they include 5, it's still only a 2-part question. If they only include 1 theme, though, they haven't answered the full question. In chapter 10, again, it's the application question, so they need to follow the steps on page 152, which is give an application, problems to the application, and solve the application. Now, there's principles given in the text to develop a good application that are really, really helpful, but what I've found is nobody does them. I think what they think the steps are those found on page 152. So if you have some students that are like going through steps like finding the equivalent, let me just look it up real quick. This is page 152. Yeah, on page 146, determine the original meaning, find the principles behind the specific commands, discover a similar situation today. That would be ideal, but nobody does it, so I don't mark them off for that. If they supply an application, if they list problems and reply to the application, then they've answered all 3 parts. In chapter 11, again, it's 4 parts. In chapter 12, it's 1 part. Here we get into Matthew 10, 1 through 16. It's a 2-part question. They need to seek to determine why it's at where it is by discussing the surrounding context. That's 1 part. And then they explicitly need to discuss verses 24 through 25 in addition. So that's the 2nd part. Again, the application question 3-part. Chapter 11, 4-part. 12 is 1 part. If they don't substitute, that's fine. Some students get confused on that. So overall, there's 14 parts to the Genesis question. They are 14 things they need to respond to. 12 in the Romans and 10 in Matthew. Brings us to a total of 36 points. So yeah, so I just times that by 2, and that gets me to 72. Therefore, every response is worth 2 points. That means when they're answering the topic, a topic is worth 2 points. Theme is worth 2 points. Proposition is worth 2 points. Redemptive focus is worth 2 points. In the Romans question number 1, where they list problems, that's 2 points. When they solve a problem, that's 2 points. When they list an application, that's 2 points. When they list problems, it's 2 points. When they solve problems, that's 2 points. And so on and so on. That leaves us with 28 points for grammar and syntax, readability. If their format's terrible, that is included in that category. So, I mean, we're all probably going to be pretty similar if a page has more than, I don't know, two typos, then and it's consistent on each page, then they're not going to get an A. They'll probably get a B, and so on and so on for that section. So that's how you grade it. Let me think if there's any other questions you might have. I don't think so, but we might as well do one together. So let's go up here. Doriani assignments. Okay. Now I have A through Davis plus 2 W's. Again, you're welcome, Matt. All right, Andrew Larson. Are we in the right thing? Yes, we are. Yes. Okay, Andrew Larson. See how he did. Okay, so setting the stage. After these things, it's good. Yes, that's good. Characters, the second thing. So we're looking again. This is found on page 70. So characters. Okay. He discusses the characters, the Lord, and so on. Conflict. Yes, God tested Abraham. That's good. Crisis and climax. The climax is the accumulation of ominous command. This right here really should be in the crisis, right? So we're going to review. This should be... Actually, no, that's fine. I'm sorry about that. That's okay. Resolution. This probably should be in the climax, though. This here would be more in the resolution. So we're saying here, let's be in the crisis climax section. So take off a point there. In the following action, there is another declaration of the angel of the Lord, presumably after sacrifice the ram. Promises previously made to Abraham through this context, they're particularly linked to the fear of the Lord. So it's pretty important. Let's see, this is Genesis 22, right? That they include, let's see, is that the inclusion? They include like a restatement of the promises in verse 17. So it's pretty important that in the resolution they talk about verse 17. So let's see, does he do that? Abraham, through this kind, they are particularly linked to the fear of the Lord. The Lord reiterates through his angel the promises. That's fine. That's good. Okay. So 1 point off of that. Chapter 10. So this is the application. So let's see if we can get through this quickly. Okay, yeah. So he did this. Look at the fear of the Lord. Good. So he's actually going through the principles. This is great. Okay, so how can I put this into practice to obey the commands, instruction of Scripture, even when it causes us to give up something important to us? Good, okay. This could be a lucrative career, good. So here are the objections. I might have worked hard, good. How does, let's see, this response fails, and here he's replying, so that's perfect, good. Okay, topic, God's testing of Abraham, good, that's general. Theme, God's fear of the Lord. Okay, so that's a more specific nuance on the topic. It's God's testing Abraham, and Abraham is fearing the Lord, so that's good. Because the Lord always keeps his promises, we can obey him. Great. Faith of Abraham in God. His covenant promise is the same faith looks to Jesus. That's good. Isaac, as the promised offspring, kept from death. That's good too. Okay. So obvious problems. They don't have to do this, divide this into obvious, teacher, and hidden problems, but they have to solve some. So let's see if he solves any. We think we understand the term of Peel and brothers. Okay, so he doesn't answer any. It looks like, let's see here, chapter 7, yeah. So again, you need to also solve some problems. That's -2. Because remember, each aspect is -2. The reason why I only took off -1 here is because the rest of it was good. So total, it was worth 2. He just included something he probably ought not to, -1. Okay, themes, worship and transformation, perfect, that's sufficient. I think a way that it can be applied is our minds. We have to present our minds to the Lord. It's good. Simply good. Good, so he does everything there. It's perfect. Because of the mercies of God, we have to devote ourselves. This is good. Good, okay. Text is where it at. Set stage for discourse. That is to continue. Alright. You should set this off with commas. Let's see. When you start a sentence with a prepositional phrase, set it off with commas, with a comma. Okay. He is sending out to accomplish. Okay, good. We have naming of the 12 disciples. It's good. This is really important. They're not above their master and therefore not above the. This is good. Good. Okay. One way to apply this text would be to freely share the gospel. Good. However, so this is his response. Okay, that's fine. Good. This is more specific than the topic. Good. So there's ethical command. That's good. And the reflection of Jesus expects the 12 to freely minister on behalf of the kingdom of God. That's good. Okay, great. So you did really well. So I'm not seeing any typos really. So we have -2, -1. This is great. So it was readable. I mean, there's another thing right there. Whatever. See comment below. Okay, yeah. So this is you did really well. 97. So honestly, we have most students do well on this assignment. The students who don't do well are just those who just leave out things. So key things I'm looking for, right, is that I'm looking for content in specific areas. Students mostly miss, the distinction between a crisis and climax and resolution. That's an important place to look. Really hone in on the topic, theme, proposition. Like his propositions were good, but if they're not following the sentence structure of because the text says A, we ought to do B, it's -1 at least, if not -2. Themes must be more specific than topics. They must be developments of topics. If they don't do that, it's wrong. Redemptive focus and themes are typically pretty good. Application, I mean, you might get a crazy application, and I think what I've gotten sometimes is you get people who aren't ever applying the text. They just talk about what the text is saying. So you really want somebody to say you ought to do this, or you ought to believe this, or you ought to um, something ought to be changed. That's application. So if they're not prescribing something, that's at least a -1 as well. Um, yeah, so as far as specific content they give you, those are the areas you're going to want to look out for. But most people do just fine. Yeah, so if most people are getting A's and B's, then it should be pretty good. So if you have any questions, go ahead and email me. Okay.